It's Barbara DiLorenzo. I am the teacher for the New York Institute of Art and Design for the graphic design program. And I wanted to share a little bit about Unit 3 and the project that you will need to work on for the social media campaign. Right now, we're looking at a series of templates that you're given when you research this project, and there are 25 options. And you have a lot of different types of sales or things that you want to advertise, and so this is for you to choose what works for you. Right now you don't see any of these artboards showing up in the layers, so I'm going to go to my layers palette and bring that up, and now we can see the templates listed across all of these. So if you want to hunt through and find the ones that really work for you, you can delete the rest. It's very easy. Just drag a template to the trash and there it goes. I'm just going to get rid of a whole bunch just to make this demonstration a little bit easier. And let's say I'm going to just leave 5 at the end of this. I'm holding down the Command key as I select the templates. Okay, so that's too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm going to delete that, and I'm left with these. So let's say this is what I decided made the most sense to me, and that this is what I want to work with. Many students have noticed, and accurately so, that when you zoom in, some of the type is very pixelated. This is kind of a funny concept because it actually is very high resolution. It's brought in as actually a Photoshop big document. So if you look at it, I just double clicked it. If you look at it outside, you can see how very sharp the text is. The designers that put together this project wanted you to have the best resources possible. But in doing so, in taking this really big file and saying, okay, at 300 pixels per inch at, maybe, I don't know, 5 by 7, this looks extremely clear and crisp. Well, it's a vector, so it'll look good at any size. When you distill it down into a very small box and you're asking no longer vector points and lines to represent the shapes, you're asking pixels to represent the shapes, you're going to get some level of dithering or pixelation. So what happens is at this size, I'm going to click on my up here, I'm going to get the Artboard tool. I'm going to select this artboard, and then I'm going to go under Window and Properties. Where are Properties? There it is. We can see it's only 225 pixels wide by 225 pixels high. That means there's probably only about 10 or 20 pixels representing a letter. And so as we zoom in, we can see that to make a straight line, to make a straight line, there might be a little bit of gray, but anytime you have any kind of curve, there's a series of gray tones that are softening that curve. And the smaller the type, the more complicated that becomes. This O is a series of very dark pixels to kind of make that O, but over here you can tell there's a difference between, on the right side it's more of a black line down, on the left side it's more gray. So it's doing the best it can to represent what you're asking it to in a small form. So it is not the problem of the type in this case, it is the problem of the container that we're putting it into. A solution that I've mentioned at the end of Unit 2 submissions is to set up a bigger artboard. Some people are a little confused on how to do that, hence this video. So here's how to do it. If you have selected your 5 videos and you get your artboard tool, which is on the top left, you can toggle between the move tool and the artboard tool, and you click on the template that you want to affect and you go to properties. You can change this. You can make it 500, you can make it 1,000, and the reason why I am allowing people to do this is because I want you to have good portfolio pieces that you feel confident about. So in this case, I'm going to switch back to the move tool. I'm going to move this giant artboard a way, actually, to move the artboard, I have to go back onto the template tool. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Only in a demo would things go this haywire. Um, Sorry. I apologize for that. Move your artboard out of the way. And you can do this for all of them, by the way. So you can click on uh, this template, and again, if I want everything to be 1,000 pixels wide, it might be too big for what you're doing. Actually, instead of 1,000, let's do 500. That seems a little more appropriate, given that we still want something that could be shown um, in this online format. Okay, let's change the size of this one again. All right, 500 and 500. Okay, and now we can kind of move them together. Oh my goodness, I'm just not having a good day with moving stuff around. All right, so now that I have those 2 pixels, I'm going to get the pixel artboards. I'm going to get the rest of them set up so that they are nearby. And you might be wondering, like, okay, I get that this is how we handle the sizing of the template, but how do I resize the type? And then what do I do with the images? And so I will show you that once I move this guy over. Okay, so we have 500. So the type, as I said, is brought in as this Photoshop big, vector image. So it is really large. So what we can do is we can select with that move tool, we can select that particular item on that layer. And if you select Command T for free transform, suddenly you have the option to scale this. And if you hold down Shift, you're going to keep the proportion the same. And you just drag it to the corner, roughly. It doesn't have to be exact. And hit Enter. Suddenly, that type is a lot cleaner. If we zoom into it, that 2 that we were looking to before, whoops, sorry, is represented by pixels still, but it's a little softer. It's not quite as jagged. The 5 is a little cleaner. It's just easier to read. Now, granted, I'm looking at this at 700%. If I go back down to 100%, it's really clear. So I would just resize all of the type, just like you saw me do there. And then when you want to place a resource, I'm going to place, I'll do place linked. Although you should probably place embedded so I can see what you're doing. Let's take, let's see, let's take this image and place it. And now it's going to be on this artboard, the width of the artboard, but I can make this a little bit bigger if I want to. So again, that hold down the Shift. I didn't mean to zoom in quite so close. And you will maintain those proportions. Hit Enter. And then I'm just going to go over to the Layers palette and slide it underneath the type. I have some complications with the black type over the girl because there's a lot of tones there that compete with it, but over that faded figure in the background it's a little easier to read. So now I can work with my global adjustment layers to manipulate this and make it what I want it to be, but no matter what, now the type is clean and clear, and I can start working with my photos and make it what I want. I would also import vector images, maybe a triangle or other shape that might indicate like click here, whatever works for you. Here's an example a student did where there's lots of beautiful vector shapes brought in, and as you can tell this artboard is set to 500 pixels by 500 pixels, and there's a complementary color scheme going on. The type is clear and it just looks very fun. So this is what I hope that everyone can emulate, is a lovely arrangement of cohesive ads where we see over here in the layers, we see lots of choices and how to edit the work, but without being destructive. Like Happy Friday, if we turn off that brightness contrast, no photos were harmed in the making of this. There's also a gray circle brought in. There's other gradients. There's so much going on. Masking is used. This is what I hope for everybody is that you can bring in all these elements and make the work look strong. And then because it's a little bit bigger than the original size for the social media campaign, if it is shown in your portfolio, that's fine. If you were to actually deliver this series to someone showing these ads on online somewhere, one of the better decisions to make would be to use a typeface that works at 225 pixels square. Right now, these choices were done at a bigger size, so they look great at a bigger size. But scaled down, they're hard to read, they're pixelated, they're challenging. The better thing is go under your type tool either here or in Illustrator and find big, bold, solid choices for small type, and don't make it all that small either. Or you can make the type choices in here. If you choose to make a type choice happen here, like let's say I say click here, and that is clearly not visible at all. Whoops, I'm going to pull up my character palette so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to pick a different color. Let's pick red so everyone can see. Okay, so now I have a choice in my character palette of, do I want this to be smooth? Do I want it to be sharp? Actually, it's not affecting it because I'm not selecting it. Okay, so there's a difference between sharp and the pixelation versus when you go in and you say, actually, I want it to be smooth. So it shifts ever so slightly. You can do a back and forth comparison on that when you're working with things. I would also say that a script, let's say, or even this, that might be harder to read if it's super small. So let's put it 9 point. It's so hard to see. Anything bigger, it's kind of hard to see. But if we decide to go with something like Futura, and let's say we keep it all caps, and we say, let's make it bold. Now suddenly, even if I go back down to 9 point, it's still a little hard to read. Let's go up to 12 point. But it's possible, whereas before not as much. So keep in mind that there are certain limitations to small work that, when you only have so many pixels to represent something, you really need it to be a font that it can work with. Something thicker, something bolder, something not with a script. A script would be torture. If you use, for example, Zepfino, that again, nothing really entirely looked great. Um, well, I mean, you can kind of read it, but there is a difference between that, which is faint, and then Futura at 12 points. That's not a good demo. At approximately the same size. It's just a little easier to see, although that is condensed. I want it bold. It makes it a lot easier. So keep those things in mind, and if you have any questions, as always, you are always welcome to contact me.